New York Governor Andrew Cuomo telling extreme conservative candidates to get out of his state. Now, that comment making many conservatives furious. Sean Hannity saying he can't wait to get out of New York. And get this, Texas is already putting out the welcome mat for Hannity. Sean Hannity joins us. Nice to see you, Sean.
Greta, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
You already got out a long time ago.
Indeed. All right, so what's the story? Are you leaving New York?
You know, look, it's funny because the news picked this up. I got picked up by Breitbart last night, comments that I made on my radio show, and I think people might have interpreted it that I'm leaving the next day. If I could, I probably would, but I like to consider myself a responsible person, and by my count, there's probably over 100 people that count on me between radio and television for their jobs, and they've got mortgages and car payments and leases and rents and all this stuff. But I went home last night, and my wife and I talked about this seriously. I live in New York, Greta. I pay 40% taxes, the highest rate, federal level. That doesn't include FICA, Social Security. You've got nearly 10% of state tax. I work in New York City. I pay a New York City tax. I live in the second highest property tax county in the country, which is Nassau County. So about 62% is my taxable rate of every dollar that I make. And you know what? It's too much. It's almost like I am facilitating the robbery of the hard-earned money that I'm making, and I'm not going to do it anymore. As soon as I am able, sometime probably when my son graduates from high school, I'm getting out of here as quick as I can.
All right. Well, it sounds like Andrew Cuomo probably would like to see you go, but he was talking. It was sort of interesting, though. He was talking about extreme candidates, as was what he says it was. Right. But the interesting thing is, though, he says there's no place for extreme candidates in New York State. Candidates. Yet Angela Davis, who's a communist, is in New York at a Martin Luther King holiday, and no one's objecting to her. The
new mayor of New York is right there. This is the United Socialist State of New York. There is no higher tax state. Greta, if you go to a restaurant in New York, forget about getting a large Coke, which they now ban. If you want salt, they're not allowed to put it on the table. You have to request salt separately because the nanny state of New York and New York City, they decide what's best for you. But what he said is, and this is really important, and we're going to get into this tonight at 10, because when he goes on to say those that are right to life, pro-assault weapons, anti-gay. Well, I'm pro-life. And I am pro-Second Amendment, and I have Barack Obama's position 2 years ago on the issue of traditional marriage. So does that mean that the Cardinal of New York at St. Patrick's, he's not welcome here? Every priest, every brother, every nun, every Catholic, every Christian that's pro-life in New York? Is he insulting everybody that's a person of faith now? There's no free, open exchange of ideas and ideals and opinions. That is a sad state of affairs. Liberals are not the tolerant people that they proclaim to be, Greta. This is a sad moment.
In the press release that came out of his office in response to the New York Post article, his counsel said, the governor has never demonized the opposition to his gun law, nor stance on protecting choice, nor marriage equality. The governor is a gun owner and a Catholic.
Well, it's not the position of the Catholic Church. His father did this when he spoke at Notre Dame in the 80s, and he tried to say that, yeah, I'm pro-life, but I can't impose that on people. You know, I'll let him take that up with his priest, his bishop, and maybe the cardinal himself. But that is not the position of the church. On the issue of guns, Greta, it's so restrictive in New York. I was a marksman since I'm 12 years old because my parents were in law enforcement. I carried guns in New York, Rhode Island, California, Alabama, and Georgia more than half of my adult life. But this governor actually passed a law where you couldn't have more than 7 bullets in a gun because he said nobody in New York City needs 10 bullets to shoot a deer, as he says. And, you know, there aren't many deer in New York City the last time I've seen. So I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe in upstate, maybe in Long Island. He's very restrictive. It's their way or the highway. You know, I look at it, you know, how does Texas have a $12 billion surplus and they're in debt up to their eyeballs in Albany when they have a 10% state income tax? And there's no income.